That in its own was, of course, a jaw-dropping revelation. And that is where the story stood last week when former CIA Director John Brennan commented on it. But now the story has gotten even darker. This week, the New York Times reported that even before Trump Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard fired the agents who published a truthful report, her chief of staff had ordered intelligence analysts to rewrite that truthful report so it could not be, quote, used against Trump. So not only is the Trump administration firing intelligence agencies for telling the truth, they are also pressuring them to be, at least the very least, less than truthful.
If you thought Donald Trump's Memorial Day couldn't get any more disgraceful considering he woke up early this morning to tweet out calling Democrats scum, failing to mention any of our service members, if you thought that was rock bottom, I don't know why you thought that it's Donald Trump. Of course, it got worse during the speech he gave. Donald Trump not only melted down and made it all about himself, but lost the ability to speak, and just a humiliating display. We're going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into Donald Trump's cognitive failure in this speech that we've seen more and more lately, I want to start with what he was first and foremost caring about. Yes, it's himself.
Sacrifice would mean to us, but we certainly know what we owe to them. Their valor gave us the freest, greatest, and most noble republic ever to exist on the face of the earth. A republic that I am fixing after a long and hard 4 years. That was a hard 4 years we went through. Who would let that happen? People pouring through our borders unchecked, people doing things that are indescribable and not for today to discuss. But the republic that is now doing so very well, we're doing so very well right now, considering the circumstances, and will do record-setting better with time. We will do better than we've ever done as a nation, better than ever before, I promise you that.
What exactly are you fixing, Donald? Is it the economy that you took and destroyed with the most idiotic trade war in the, I don't know, history of free trade? Is it the Constitution that you're blatantly wiping your butt with every day? Is it communities? You're making more unsafe a judicial system. You're attacking and checks and balances. You're trying to get rid of service members who feel less safe because of you and your buddy, Pete Hegseth, who looks like he was recovering from a Sunday night out. I don't know if maybe I had a couple. It's Memorial Day. Maybe he's already started. But what exactly have you done to make the country better? Donald Trump views America as great when Donald Trump is in charge. When Donald Trump gets to do what Donald Trump wants to, that's it. That's the only time he actually views America as great. This is not about a memory of those who have served our country. This is not what he's celebrating today. He's celebrating himself, and he continued to not talking about our service members, but the Olympics for some reason. Just take a listen to what he had to say.
Even for a moment that freedom is a gift of the highest cost and peace is won at the most precious price. These extraordinary American heroes and their immense and ultimate sacrifices, they offer only the faintest glimpse at the infinite grace we have received from all who laid down their lives for America over the past 250 years. We're going to have a big celebration, as you know, 250 years. In some ways, I'm glad I missed that second term where it was, because I wouldn't be your president for that most important of all. In addition, we have the World Cup and we have the Olympics. Can you imagine? I missed that 4 years, and now look what I have. I have everything. Amazing the way things work out. God did that. I believe that too. God did it. You know, I got the World Cup and I got the Olympics. The 250 years was not mine. I'd like to take credit for it. But I got the Olympics, I got the World Cup when I was president. And I said, boy, it's too bad I won't be president then. And look what happened. I turned out, and we're going to have a great time. We're going to have a great celebration. But most important of all is the 250th anniversary. That blows everything away, including the World Cup and including the Olympics, as far as I'm concerned. In any corner of this cemetery, at any resting place for our war dead, anywhere on earth, you'll find untold stories of equal heroism and heartbreak, unmatched patriotism and
The fact that people were clapping for Donald Trump getting to be president during the Olympics and the World Cup. What are we doing right now? This is a day of remembrance. And Donald Trump is making it about how excited he is to, play pretend leader during a bunch of ceremonies. There is nothing that Donald Trump has done to lead this country. There is nothing that makes him deserving of respect or certainly applause. This is humiliating. That this is what our president does, goes out and makes it about himself. A man who, like I said at the beginning of this video, didn't even mention service members in his post about scum judges. He's a joke. It's gross. And of course, as you'd expect, the speech didn't just sound stupid. It sounded incoherent because Donald Trump couldn't talk through most of it. We saw that right here.
As a linguist, translator, and cryptologic technician.
Oh gosh, it just gets worse and worse, doesn't it? Just gets worse and worse. He can't get through a 4-syllable word. I don't even know what he's trying to say there. And he clearly doesn't either. And he just kind of stops like, did anyone hear that? Did anyone hear that I'm completely unintelligible? And you got Pete Hegseth in the background who just looks like he's falling asleep. I have to say this again. I feel like Pete Hegseth might have had a couple to start the morning. Or maybe he's recovering from last night. It wouldn't be surprising if a Sunday night out was in the cards for Pete Hegseth, all things considered. Again, this is not an administration that has done anything for the men and women who serve this country. They have only made them more unsafe. And we see that not just in the actions of Pete Hegseth, but in the rest of Donald Trump's cabinet, Tulsi Gabbard as well, who just fired 2 national intelligence officials in a story that I don't think is getting nearly enough coverage. Jen Psaki broke it all down. I want to take a look because this is really important.
It's clearly a signal to tell analysts throughout the intelligence community, you tell the truth, you provide objective analysis as you're supposed to be doing, you are running the risk of getting fired.
That was former CIA Director John Brennan on my colleague Nicole Wallace's show just last week. Now, the blockbuster story he was reacting to at the time was the news that Trump Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard had fired intelligence officials for putting out an intelligence report that contradicted Trump. As former CIA Director Brennan put it last week, they were fired for telling the truth. Back in March, Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan immigrants without due process, of course. And his justification at the time, as I'm sure you remember, for invoking the act was his claim that America was being, quote unquote, invaded by Venezuela. Invaded specifically by members of the Tren de Aragua gang at the direction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. It turns out, though, that, as you all know, that is not true. That's false. The intelligence report these analysts were fired over stated that the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua was not controlled by or in cahoots with Venezuela's president. U.S. intelligence agents reported the actual truth, the truth that contradicted Trump, and were fired for it. That in its own was, of course, a jaw-dropping revelation. And that is where the story stood last week when former CIA Director John Brennan commented on it. But now the story has gotten even darker. This week, the New York Times reported that even before Trump Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard fired the agents who published a truthful report, her chief of staff had ordered intelligence analysts to rewrite that truthful report so it could not be, quote, used against Trump. So not only is the Trump administration firing intelligence agencies for telling the truth, they are also pressuring them to be, at least the very least, less than truthful. Joining me now is former CIA Director John Brennan. It's great to see you, and I know you've been following this closely, and as somebody who grew up and rose to the top of the intelligence community, I can only imagine how outraged you feel as you see all of the developments. But I just have to ask you about this latest one. I mean, what do you make of this reporting that the chief of staff for the director of national intelligence was pressuring intelligence analysts who are not political at all? They're just doing their job. They're providing the analysis, pressuring them to rewrite their findings to be more in line with what Trump wanted.
Well, Jen, it's worrisome on so many levels. First of all, the integrity and objectivity of the intelligence community's analysis is a solemn obligation of all analysts to make sure that there's going to be no politicization of that analysis and that intelligence. And it's quite clear from the reporting that has come out that the direction that was coming from Tulsi Gabbard's chief of staff, Joe Kent, tried to manipulate the analysis so that it would, in fact, conform with what the Trump administration has done on Venezuela. And it's because these analysts resisted that interference is the reason why they were fired. But also, this individual, Joe Kent, has been nominated to be the director of the National Counterterrorism Center. I was the first director of the National Counterterrorism Center. And it's critically important that the leader of that center really makes sure that all analysis that comes out of it is going to adhere to those requirements of objectivity and integrity. And this individual clearly is a partisan individual who wanted to, reshape the analysis again so that it wouldn't be used to undercut either Gabbard or Donald Trump. And again, it's just so contrary to everything that intelligence analysts throughout their careers, throughout their training, have been taught.
At any level, puts them all in an incredibly untenable position. I wanted to ask you, too, about some news that just broke a few hours ago. And we've seen reporting about this for the last couple of weeks. NBC News is reporting that at least half of the National Security Council has been fired or put on leave. And a lot of the explanation you hear from people is, well, Trump doesn't rely on a policy team, so he doesn't need a policy process. And I always say, but that's the whole process of having cabinet agencies and cabinet members debate and suss things out and consider things. It's also the implementation mechanism. But help us understand, you've sat on the NSC, just how big of a deal bringing it down from 350, 400 to whatever size it is now and firing 100 people on a Friday afternoon.
Well, Jen, I think the aim and the purpose is very similar to what they're trying to do with the intelligence analysis. They don't want to have anything, again, that's going to contradict Donald Trump. And as you well know, the National Security Council staff is the staff responsible for debating the various policy issues and exploring options, the pros and cons, to make sure that there is going to be an interagency process and discussion that is going to be able to surface the most advisable path that U.S. policy should go down. But if Donald Trump decides these policies irrespective and without any input, I can see why they wanted to remove individuals within that National Security Council staff, because that is the place where you're going to have options discussed. This is where you may, in fact, raise issues, that's going to, again, be contrary to what Donald Trump's druthers and decisions are. So again, I think it just demonstrates that they don't want any independence of thought within the national security community. They want to make the decisions top down, and it's clear that, after Donald Trump makes these decisions, they just want to have supporting documentation to again, undergird his decisions, again, irrespective of the analytic strength of any of those decisions.
As you know incredibly well, because you've worked with all of them, I mean, there are people on the NSC working on issues that may not be front and center for the president at any given period of time because they're working in different bureaus, working on different things around the world. It's being reported that staffers were only given a half an hour's notice between when they were told they were being put on leave and when they had to exit the building. And there, again, the points of contact when it's working through the interagency. Can you help us understand, why the sudden nature of this seems concerning and destructive on its own, but what do you think?
I think it's very concerning. And, Marco Rubio, who was Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, supposedly had blessed this decision.
Yeah.
And again, this is a way to constrain whatever type of, intelligence as well as discussion needs to take place. The NSC staff is supposed to orchestrate that interagency process. But I think from all accounts, there's really no interagency process right now. It's just, this group of folks up at the top who are moving forward with the decisions that Donald Trump is making, again, without the appropriate input. So again, this is just antithetical to all of those processes and all the administrations before it that relied heavily on the National Security Council staff in order to make sure that they tee up the options and the pros and cons of those policy courses.
John Brennan, thank you for staying up with us, not up with us, but thank you for being with us on Friday night. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
It was clear from day one, this was executed. This was articulated. This was the architecture of Project 2025, loyalty to Trump above all else. That is what you're signing up for. This is not a government of public servants. These are servants for the president in the mind of Donald Trump. And so if you're not doing that job, you're not doing your job, at least to those in the Trump administration. It is about complete fealty. Why do you think Pete Hegseth still has a job? You think it's because he's good at it. No, it's because he'll ultimately always do what Donald Trump wants. That is what this is about. It's about loyalty to him. It is not about keeping us safe. It is not about keeping Donald Trump's promises. The only promises he's keeping are to his billionaire buddies because they bought him off. That's this administration. That's how you should understand it. Not only are our economic conditions getting worse and worse every day, but you are unsafe. The chaos that Republicans like to write off as mean tweets in Donald Trump's first term, those are serious national security implications. Now, they were then, of course, but now they are certainly worse and certainly scarier, and we have to call them out, especially on a day like today. We're going to be doing that on this show, and if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments, and happy Memorial Day to you all. Even if Donald Trump considers you scum, I'd say that's a badge of honor. I'd certainly wear it. And until next time, I'll see you soon.